Hello and welcome into another edition of Mountaineer Mafia. This week we'll take a look at our game against Wake Forest, but we'll go over what happened last weekend against Texas State first. So, last weekend against Texas State we racked up a total of 116 yards rushing, 167 yards passing. It's not really great statistics, but we'll break down a little bit of why. We were horrible on third downs, mostly because we kept them to third and longs, not really too many third and manageables, so we're going to have to work on that. We also turned the ball over on a bad fumble on the 2-yard line when Taylor tried to reach out and pretty much ice the game for us. It obviously didn't turn out our way, and they went down the other side of the field and went 98 out of 99 yards they needed and almost tied the game up there at the very last second. So Texas State certainly had the athletes in place to make plays. So we kind of went over that last week. Damian Williams showed his arm strength on that long touchdown throw. It was just a beautiful pass. Defensively, we weren't terribly out of place, probably just a few steps, but when a quarterback's going to throw something like that and a wide receiver's fast, those types of plays are going to happen. So hopefully we can prevent that from happening this weekend. But Elijah King lit us up for 112 yards receiving. I had a feeling they were going to be a big target for him going forward into that weekend because of what happened against Colorado the week before. He was held pretty much to nothing. And he was going to try and prove that he was still a good player that everyone thought he was, and he certainly did that. So he had a very big game against us. We mostly held their running game in check, really, though. I thought we did a pretty good job not allowing them to rush for a whole lot of yardage, and I didn't really notice any massive run plays for them, so I thought I was pretty impressed with that overall. Terrence Upshaw for us came in and came up big with 60 yards and a long touchdown, mostly there in the absence of Jalen Moore, who shot out most of the second half. I would say Malik Williams and Thomas Hennigan are definitely proving to be great recruits at the wide receiver position. Most people didn't know who they were coming into the season, and they're very noticeable now, and it's great to see number 14 getting back on the field. As we all know, it's almost like the legendary number for our school, so that's really a good thing to see. And also, I feel like the Texas State defense last week, they may be as good or even better than really advertised going into the game. I think we'll certainly find that out going forward for the rest of this season. But the bottom line is, we cannot have another game like that this Saturday. And speaking of this Saturday, it's going to be Black Saturday at the Rock, and we welcome in Wake Forest, who comes in with an undefeated record of 3-0. Now, so far they've beaten two subpar opponents in Presbyterian and Utah State. They did, however, take care of business up in Boston College earlier in this season. Their most recent game was Utah State, as I mentioned last week. They took them to the woodshed, 46-10. Now, I went back and watched some game film on that one. Utah State is not what I would consider to be a very good football team. I'm not going to say that our offense is the best out there, because it's certainly not. But I do think that our offense has better players at pretty much every position across the board. So I don't think that's going to mean we're going to have an easy time Saturday by any means. But I do think that we will perform a little bit better. Having said that, this is probably the best Wake Forest team that they've seen in a few years. So it's going to be a pretty good matchup, I think. Now, for Wake Forest, they run an up-tempo style offense, and they like to keep the speed up as long as they're moving the ball with consistency. They will slow it down a little bit from time to time depending on how they're running the offense, but they definitely like to keep the speed up. Now, their O-line isn't great. Certainly not bad, but they don't necessarily get massive pushes off the line. So I think that could fend well for our defensive line there. And I think that with how we performed against UGA's offensive line, I have a pretty good feeling that we'll be able to handle it for the most part going into this one. They did have a few false start penalties, and this was at a home game, so I don't really know why they had the false start penalties. But the louder that we can be and more disruptive we can be as fans in the stands, the more it's going to help out our defense, plain and simple. So if you can be loud, let's do it. Let's get this team on our side as much as we can and give them the energy they need to cause any disruption we can in their offense. And overall, the offense is also a really good mixture of the run and the pass. You're not going to see all of this or all of that. They do a really good job of changing up the type of plays they're calling. So you'll see a lot of that Saturday. Their quarterback, John Wolford, is a 4-year starter. He did get replaced a little bit last season, but as far as the starter when the season begins, he's been their starter for 4 years. He loves to run the ball. He actually looks a lot like Taylor Lamb when he's running to me, but he looks like he's got a little bit more speed. Maybe that's a little bit because of the longer legs he seems to have, but he definitely looks a little bit faster than Taylor. He also likes to use a lot of upper body shoulder dips when running the ball for quick little cuts, and it was really, really effective against Utah State. So hopefully our defenders don't fall for that quite as much this weekend, but he's definitely going to try and use it to his advantage. We'll have to have at least one linebacker spying him for most of the game because he's not afraid to take off and run the ball. Wide receiver, Greg Dortch, he's going to be their main target. And their other wide receiver that I really noticed last week was Hines. He's going to be a good one for him too. If we aren't careful, they'll definitely carve us up even more than Elijah King did last week. So these are two great wide receivers they've got on their team, and our defense needs to be ready. I have a feeling Duck will be called upon quite a bit. I don't know how much Wake will purposely go his direction, but I think they've got a good enough wide receiver core that they will test him this weekend. I think their running back core is really strong. It goes 3 deep from what I saw. None of their running backs are going to be burned out in this game, and for my money, Bird is probably the best they've got. He's not the starter, which is funny. He's actually got a little bit of a smaller build, but he looks quite a bit quicker and faster than Carney, and Carney is their starter. To me, Carney looks a lot like Eric Breidenstein. For those of you who are local to Boone, you might remember he was the running back for Watauga High that ended up going down to Wofford to play college, and I'm pretty sure ended up in their Hall of Fame with how good of a career he had. So this Carney kid's not bad, don't get me wrong. I just think that the Bird kid is more of your stereotypical elite running back, I'd say, and Carney's more of your old school running back. And then they've also got Colburn as their third string, I guess, technically looking at it. And he's more of your Jonathan Stewart type for Carolina Panther fans. He's probably the best combination of the speed and strength, whereas Bird's more of the speed and Carney's more of the power. This guy, Colburn, comes in and he's a good combination of both. So I don't know what they see that puts him third on the depth chart, but you know, we're gonna see all three. So there's a good chance that they get quite a few rushing yards because they're just going to be reloading. And then I would say there's not going to be a great opportunity for us to return a lot of kicks. Mike Weaver is their kicker, and he looks to have a great leg. From what I saw, is very accurate as far as kicking field goals go. So we'll see what happens with that. Our return game isn't known to be the greatest. I really hope Darrington Evan is back this week to give us a little boost there. And maybe Hennigan stays back there to return some too, which he hasn't been bad, but he just hasn't really broken anything wide open just yet either. Defensively, they run out of the base 4-3, and they're very good defensively up front. So they're definitely going to get a push, and they're going to get pressure. And then also defensive back Isang Bassi had a great game last week, 3 tackles, 2 for loss, quarterback hurry. His name was mentioned quite a few times even when he wasn't getting on the score sheet necessarily. He was just a noticeable player, so we're going to have to keep an eye on him as far as our O-line goes to get some blocks going there. Maybe keep the tight end a little bit in to pass protect a little bit better there. He's one of their key players to keep an eye on. They do have a few of them. There's about 3 guys on the defensive line that had big weeks last week, so we'll see if they can do that against us again this week. They are the reason teams aren't scoring many points on them though so far this year, so we definitely have some musts that we're going to have to keep up with going into this weekend. My first must is Taylor must make smart decisions when running and throwing the ball. We also can't go down early. Just can't afford to do it against a team like this. Jalen Moore must return to form. I know he got a little banged up. I don't know if he'll see a lot of action, but when he does see the field this weekend, he definitely needs to be back to where he was performing at last year. Defense will have to be a bend but don't break type of day because look, Wake Forest is going to get their yards, but the bottom line is we cannot afford another Miami type game. Either as a team or as a fan base, we really just don't want to see that. So I think the other big factor that we haven't hit on hugely here yet, I think the kicking game is going to be pretty important in this one. I see both defenses going to be holding up pretty well. I don't see a lot of high-scoring affair for either side on this one. So I think we're going to have to see kicking as a major factor, as I feel that going down to the fourth quarter, it's going to be a very tightly contested game. So Again, no true prediction, but I really do feel like this one is going to be there for the taking. We just have to play well and play sound game. I think this one's going to look a little bit more like some of our bowl games from the past 2 years than more of the regular season as far as the atmosphere and the way the game goes. I don't think either team's going to totally dominate. I think it's going to be a really competitive game and a fun one to watch. So I'm really excited to get to my first game this season in person. And for those of you going to the Rock, have a good time and be loud. And most importantly, go out.